Yankee Doodle went to town riding on a pony, stuck a feather in his hat and called it macaroni. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, Yankee Doodle dandy. Mind the music and the step, and with that girls be handy.
I swear, I was so afraid at our school's PTA meeting that I thought some of the people in the audience were going to start throwing cookies and cupcakes at our mom on the stage. Oh yeah, okay. Once upon a time.
Once upon is now. Two stories combined, past and present. But no one in this town has any idea whatsoever about the future. Especially 4 days from now, come 4th of July.
I'm thinking of asking our mom and dad if I can get on a bus and go 120 miles away to celebrate the 4th of July with Aunt Trudy.
Whatever happens 4 days from now in our town's public park for the annual 4th of July celebration is anyone's guess, with all the chaos going on, ever since our mom and so many women decided to rebel and break tradition and...
Wow! Thank you both. I've been struggling about a headline for my podcast, and maybe the two of you just gave me possible ideas. Perhaps Once Upon a Time is Now, or a different firework explosion in a chaos community celebration. I was previously thinking something like, The Revolution Continues. Tradition versus rebellion.
Can I remind you about something?
Sure.
You know that our father didn't want us to talk to you about what's happening.
But our mom agreed with you that it would be great for your podcast to be about kids' reactions, about the adult reactions that's happening here.
But remember, you did promise our dad that before you post your podcast on social media, you would let him listen to see if he had any objections to whatever you write and record. He doesn't want your podcast to make me and my brother look bad and have some people...
like grumpy Mr. Ebenezer Smudgeton, who's the leader of the town's traditionalists, rebelling against our mom, who is the leader of the rebellion against the traditionalists. Just like the 1776 American rebels against the British King George.
Only nobody is fighting with muskets and guns and cannons, just with words. And words cause a lot of wounds, too.
Well, your small rural hick town... Oh, sorry, my apologies. Hick isn't a nice description about any town. I should mind my P's and Q's and say your small rural... Once upon a time, nobody in the world outside this area really ever heard about town, is now being talked about on social media by millions of people around the entire country. So in truth, both your mom and her followers and Mr. Ebenezer Smudgeton, who I believe is the owner of the shovel, rake, and bucket store, and his followers have, as we say in journalism, put your town on the world map. So all this 4th of July celebration chaos is bringing tourists here who never would have come here, which is good for the economy, right?
Chaos might be good for attracting tourists and their money, but it isn't good for friendships.
Lots of people who were friends for a long time now ain't talking to one another.
Even kids at our school who are best friends aren't talking to each other unless it's in secret because of their parents taking sides.
And lots of people ain't buying their shovels or rakes or buckets to use in picking up cow and pig and goat and horse poop on their farms, and that's all making Mr. Smudgeton even more angry. And we all know he's always angry, even when there ain't nothing for him to be angry about.
Okay, let's start. I'll begin by playing excerpts from your mom's shocking speech at the elementary school's PTA meeting, and I'll ask you questions about your observations of audience reactions.
Old Mr. Ebenezer Smudgeton was really mad and got even angrier when he found out that his wife was helping our mom by designing the women's costumes for...
Let's wait to talk about him after I play his excerpt. Let's start with your mom. Ready?
Wait a second. Remember that she's the vice president of the PTA, and
Our father is the president.
she was on the agenda to give a report about the school's annual library fundraising project.
This year's fundraiser was better than last year's. This year, the school library got enough money to buy 10 books.
Okay, listen to your mom.
Good evening, parents, grandparents, and the great professionals who work in our incredible elementary school. As each of you know, the fundraiser for our school library was a great success. However, that is not what I intend to speak to you about tonight. As each of you know, there are rumors circulating around town. Rumors that started with both gossip and facts. Hard to imagine sometimes that gossip actually contains factual information. I feel compelled to remind everyone that our town's annual 4th of July celebration is right around the corner. As with every year, we celebrate with an incredible parade of 10 floats and a marching band and all our colorful horse-drawn wagons and the fire baton twirlers and our beloved 91-year-old Mrs. Gertrude Hall leading the parade with her magnificent tuba playing. And of course, leading from one end of town into the public park and arriving on the stage where we are entertained all day by choirs from our elementary and middle school and high school kids, dance recitals from Mrs. Mary Jane Lidkin's dance studio, a tremendous fireworks display thanks to this town's wonderful fire department, and of course the annual Men's 4th of July theatrical dramatic pageant honoring our founding fathers. Of course, our amateur town men actors are always tremendous. George Washington, portrayed by George Johnson for the past 32 years. Thomas Jefferson, performed by Thomas Henderson for the past 18 years. John Adams, portrayed by Adam Johns for the past 46 years. And Benjamin Franklin, performed by Benjamin Oakley Jr. for the past 3 years, since Benjamin Oakley Sr. passed away after portraying Benjamin Franklin for 51 straight years. As the saying goes, some things never change. But I believe it's time for this town to make a big change about our 4th of July celebration.
Ain't gonna happen. Ain't gonna happen now or ever. So just close your mouth and talk about the school library fundraiser.
It is time, Ebenezer Smudgeton, for this town to have a 4th of July theatrical drama pageant honoring the founding mothers of the American Revolutionary War. Women such as Mrs. Deborah Franklin, Mrs. Abigail Adams, Mrs. Martha Washington, Mrs. Martha Jefferson, and so many other women who made it possible for their husbands and other men, famous and not so famous, to create this country's independence. Women such as Phyllis Wheatley, a black slave whose poetry inspired even George Washington.
Over my dead body.
So I'm standing here to announce that I have written and will direct this town's 4th of July pageant honoring the Revolutionary War's heroic women. And yes, a group of women in our town have been meeting at my house to choose how they will participate. Actresses, costume designers and sewers, collectors of props, and even drummers and flutists and trombone musicians. And Mrs. Gertrude Hall, even though she is now 91 years old, has once again pulled out of her attic her old high school tuba.
Can you believe there were people booing Miss Gertrude Hall? Who in their right mind boos a 91-year-old tuba player?
Okay, let's stop here for a moment.
The beginning of the chaos.
My first question is, did your father know your mom was going to switch from speaking about the annual fundraiser for the library to the speech about the 4th of July celebration?
He's in a pickle about all this chaos.
Not only is our dad the president of the PTA, he's also the vice chairman of the Public Park Commission. All of our town's celebrations are connected to the public park.
The parade has the same floats and marching bands, and the parade ends at the park.
There are dance and singing and baton twirling and costume shows and clown performances on the park's only stage, and always the same time each year. Like the high school choir always sings the same old songs at 12 noon, and Griselda the magician always does her same dog and cat magic act at 1:15.
The men's theatrical pageant is always at 8 p.m., followed by the fireworks.
There's no other time for the men's pageant. So when can the women's pageant be held? So both groups are fighting for the 8 p.m. time slot.
Okay, I get it. But let's start with my first question. Did your father, who is president of the school's PTA and was sitting on the stage when your mom gave her speech, know what she was going to do? Or did she keep it a secret from him?
Of course he knew. So many women had been meeting at our house to work on the women's pageant, and our mom and dad don't keep secrets from one another.
Not even at Christmas, because our dad can't keep a secret if his life depended on it. He always tells our mom what he bought her for Christmas before she even gets to rip off the ribbons and wrapping on her boxes.
How many people were in the audience that night?
Like 1,000.
36.
The auditorium sounded like 1,000 people.
36. Unless you count Grisella, the magician, leaving for a few seconds to take her magical dog out for a potty break.
Would you say the audience was evenly divided? Half supporting the new women's theatrical production, and the other half wanting only to continue with the men's theatrical production?
I couldn't tell which was louder, the clapping or the booing.
I would say half and half.
Let's go back to listening to your mom's speech.
They say actions speak louder than words. At this time, I would like to ask Miss Prudence Brunel to come up to the stage. As each of us know, we are so proud of Prudence for being elected 4 times in a row our town's Miss Statue of Liberty at our 4th of July celebration. In keeping with the men's tradition of only actors with the same first or last name of the characters in either the 4th of July men's pageant or the town's annual Christmas production of A Christmas Carol,
I'll be playing Ebenezer Scrooge again this year at Christmas, since I'm the only man in this town named Ebenezer, and none of you ladies in this town better even think of changing that, because tradition is tradition, and you just go ask Mr. Charles Dickens. He'll tell you all about tradition, if he was alive.
we all love Charles Dickens for writing A Christmas Carol, but he's dead, so we can't ask him anything, Ebenezer. Now, Prudence has agreed to portray in our women's theatrical pageant an American Revolutionary War hero, a young girl named Prudence Wright, and I have asked her to recite a few lines of dialogue I wrote as her monologue. She has agreed to perform for you at this very moment, even though she's only had 3 rehearsals.
You can tell your ma and you can tell your pa, Miss Prudence, that they ain't welcome in my shovel rake and bucket store no more if you keep doing what you're doing to ruin the traditions in this here town.
You need to leave. I will tell them, Mr. Smudgeon. Now, I will switch from being Prudence Brunel in the 21st century to being Prudence Wright in April 1775. I was born on November 26, 1740 in Hollis, Massachusetts. I was 21 years old when I married Mr. David Wright. We had 5 children. Here's the family problem. Everyone in my family was in support of the revolution against King George, except my 2 brothers. I discovered, it was the saddest day of my young life when I discovered they were spies for King George. I discovered this tragedy by overhearing them having a secret discussion. Well, I didn't know what to do. Should I tell my husband? Should I tell my parents?
You should sit down and shut up.
So I decided to do something so revolutionary that even the men in our town were shocked. I gathered 40 women and we formed a group to help stop the British soldiers from attacking our town. I was selected as the group's commander, and they named our group of women soldiers Mrs. David Wright's Guards. We wore our husbands' or fathers' or brothers' or men neighbors' clothes, and we armed ourselves with musket rifles and pitchforks.
Hey, I sell pitchforks in my shovel, rake, and bucket store on sale now for $12.32. But I ain't selling to no one to use in this woman's 4th of July show. That is for sure. So how you women gonna do a show about Prudence playing Prudence without a pitchfork for a prop, huh? What you gonna do? Use a kitchen spoon?
Then, one night, we 40 women set off for the bridge over the river. When my 2 brothers were just about to cross the bridge to go tell the British soldiers how to attack our town, we women soldiers attached and captured my 2 brothers. We tied them up. We arrested them. We had a trial charging them for treason. When we found them guilty, instead of executing them, we told them to get out of our town and go far away and never return. I don't know what happened to them, but I do know that the British failed to attack our town. After that, I had 6 more children. I died in 1823 when I was 83 years old. History books don't write about me as the commander of the 40 women soldiers with the Mrs. David Eric Guards. Nobody remembers us as American Revolutionary War heroes.
Well, I still ain't selling you a pitchfork from my store.
Wow, that's a story I never heard of before. I'm impressed.
But then, the next morning, there was a group of people who voted to take away the title of Miss Statue of Liberty from Prudence Brunel. Said she can't be Miss Statue of Liberty and Prudence Wright Soldier at the same time.
Don't know why not. Nobody's paying her any money to do either job.
Everyone who works on the town's annual 4th of July celebration is a volunteer?
Yes.
Except for Mr. Henry Dillingsworth. He's the celebration's cleanup man. Nobody wants to be the cleanup person in the park, so he is the only person who will do it. So they have to pay him. Otherwise, there would be horse poop all over the parade street and park for like 2 or 3 weeks until it rained.
During this whole time in the school auditorium, what was your father doing on stage? Did he try to calm the audience down?
He let our mom be in charge.
He's in a pickle about this chaos.
Yes, I know. President of the PTA and chairman of the Public Park Commission, and husband to your mom, the rebel.
Our dad is also our elementary school principal.
Yikes.
He's also the town's elected mayor.
One big sweet pickle in a jar of sour pickles.
What happened next at the PTA meeting? Because there isn't any more to hear.
Everybody was arguing. That's all.
And standing in line to get more cookies and cupcakes and coffee. One thing I learned that night was even when adults are angry about something, they gotta have their cookies, cupcakes, and coffee.
What made me the angriest was watching old, grumpy, growly Mr. Ebenezer Smudgeton chomping like a hungry, toothless cow on the cherry vanilla cupcakes our mom baked.
Everyone knows her cupcakes are the best in town. That's why she owns the town's only bakery.
But now, there are people threatening to open up a new bakery just to be rebels and end the tradition of our mom's bakery being the only bakery in town. It was a bakery started by our great-great-grandmother, and it's been in the family and this town for 93 years.
Only 2 years older than Mrs. Gertrude Hall and her tuba.
So after the PTA meeting, chaos got worse.
8 days ago, there was an emergency meeting at the City Hall auditorium. The mayor and the city council members were forced to have a meeting about the 4th of July celebration. Everyone expected them to solve the problem.
But that was stupid because
Mr. Ebenezer Smudgeton is the chairman of the city council.
and our father is the mayor.
Good gosh. In the name of Benjamin Franklin, just how many people live in this hick town? Rural country town.
812 adults, 345 teenagers, 700 children.
Only 1,857 people?
But lots of cows, goats, chickens, roosters, pigs, dogs, cats, and horses.
Okay, let's listen to excerpts from the chaotic city council meeting.
Honorable Mayor, respected city councilmen, and I do emphasize city council men. If there was time allocated, I would certainly like to ask why ever since this town was formed, there have been no city council women, no female mayors.
You are out of order, Miss Katharine Millstone. That question isn't even on the agenda. And the mayor, who, may I remind you, is your husband, and he is the administrator who approved this agenda.
I am very well aware that the mayor is my husband. Though we do not share the same office space, we certainly share the same kitchen table.
Order! I demand order! There will be no laughing in this important emergency meeting.
Did the mayor approve of the no laughing rule?
I would like to know why I am not on the agenda. I want to protest the city council men secretly voting to take away my title of Miss Statue of Liberty.
That is not what we are meeting here tonight about, and we will have a more important matter to settle.
Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempt-tossed to me.
That is enough, Prudence.
I lift my lamp beside the golden door.
Sit down, Prudence.
God bless America, land of my birth. Stand beside her and guide her.
I will hold you in contempt, Prudence Brunel, if you don't sit down and shut up.
Thank you, Prudence. You certainly deserve the title Miss Statue of Liberty. You do this town proud. Now, I would like to introduce 7-year-old Deborah Ridge, daughter of Mr. Jonathan Ridge, 7th grade history teacher, and Mrs. Helen Fastone, 12th grade history teacher.
Hello! In case anyone on the city council is curious, I'm not one bit nervous about standing here. I want to thank my parents for allowing me to speak here, and Miss Katharine Millstone for inviting me to speak with her, and to tell you a story and show you how talented I am.
Young lady, you are free to speak, but we aren't interested in hearing a story.
I am very smart, Mr. Councilman Chairman, and I have the constitutional freedom, according to the Declaration of Independence, the American Constitution, the Supreme Court, and the bylaws of both our state and town, to say whatever I want in any manner I want, as long as I don't say any cuss words, which I never do anyway. I'm an actress in the Women's 4th of July theatrical pageant. I'm portraying the daughter of Mrs. Deborah Tamfer Gannett. I'll be telling her story. Here it goes. It's March 1802. My mother is standing on stage in a Boston, Massachusetts theater, in front of a packed auditorium of theatergoers who paid lots of money for their tickets. She is dressed in a man's American Revolutionary War soldier outfit. She is holding a musket rifle. Her jacket is deep blue, and her pants are white. She is wearing a leather helmet trimmed with fur. She's on a tour throughout the newly established United States of America. People from everywhere want to hear her story. I will finish now. My heroic American Revolutionary War mother had turned housewife to soldier to actress. She, Deborah Tamper Gannett, was born on December 17th, 1760, in Massachusetts. At the age of 21, she pretended to be a man, dressed as a man, living as a man. She changed her name many times. First, she was Timothy Thayer, then Robert Shirtliff. She became a soldier. After she was discovered to be a woman, she left the army. But then, in 1782, she pretended to be again a man and joined the 4th Massachusetts Regiment of Soldiers. She was very tiny, but many of the soldiers were young men. They didn't have beards, so nobody questions her. During a battle, she was shot in the leg. Afraid to go to the hospital and be discovered, she removed the bullet herself. But she got very ill with a high fever. A doctor was called. When he discovered her true identity, she was discharged from the army again. But she was honorably discharged for bravery. She wrote a theatrical one-woman show all about her life. It was titled Mrs. Gannett, the American Heroine. The end. Come see me perform on the 4th of July in the public park with our tribute to American Revolutionary War women.
Thank you, Deborah. And I would like to go on record as saying that I am appalled, disgusted, and furious to know that there are a few ignorant people in this auditorium who would be so rude as to boo a 7-year-old child for having the courage to stand up here and perform. Shame on such people, ignorant fools.
The problem wasn't solved that night.
No, but when we got home, our mom and dad had a big argument in the basement.
Well, that's where they argue in false hopes that me and Ben don't hear them.
We hear them, especially when we put our ears against the wall.
Was your dad trying to persuade your mom to give up the idea and cancel the production?
I don't know. They were having a whisper argument.
Any idea?
I don't really know. I went across the street to listen to Mrs. Gertrude Hall practice her tuba. It was so loud, everyone in the neighborhood could hear it.
For being a 91-year-old woman, she sure has powerful lungs.
What do the two of you see as the end result? What are the children and teenagers in town saying?
Most of the kids and teens, like us, we don't think the adults should be wasting their time arguing and losing friendships. I know that our father made a suggestion that the men's pageant and the women's pageant be combined.
You know, take the traditional men's pageant. It's all what they call monologues.
Yes, I know what a monologue is.
George Washington recites a speech, Thomas Jefferson recites a speech, John Adams recites a speech, Benjamin Franklin recites a speech, And there are a few other men who recite short stories about other American Revolutionary War men.
And that's how our mom wrote the script for the women's pageant.
So the possibility may be to combine the monologues. Benjamin Franklin on stage with Mrs. Deborah Franklin, Thomas Jefferson on stage with Mrs. Martha Jefferson.
But to be in both shows, the actors and actresses have to have the same first or last name as the character they are portraying. My mom may be a rebel, but she's not a 1,000% rebel. She wants to observe this tradition. So that would mean to have the women characters like Phyllis Wheatley, the black slave poetess, Prejudice Wright, Deborah Tanpor Gannett's daughter. The men would have to find new male actors with names of those women's husbands or fathers or sons. That's really breaking tradition. So that would mean more trouble.
I have a recording of a rehearsal your mom gave me. One of the characters in the women's production is Elizabeth Bergen. I don't know who the actress is, but she sounds familiar.
It's Prudence again. She wanted to do 2 roles, one young and one old. She's so good that our mom said yes.
I was born in 1779. Even though the Declaration of Independence was written in 1776, the Revolutionary War continued. I was a widow, which sometimes made me sad, and other times I was glad. Shocking to say at times, I was thankful my husband was dead. Well, it wasn't because I didn't love him, but I couldn't have done what I did and was both admired and hated for it if he was alive while I was doing it. You see, I will tell you something the history books don't write about. Me! They don't write anything about me. I was feared and hated by the British soldiers. Even good old King George hated me for what I was doing. You see, I was helping American soldiers escape from the prisons the British soldiers built up for when they capture American soldiers. Those prisons were horrible. Just the one in New York City had over 11,000 men being held prisoners. Sometimes the churches, halls, even stores were taken over by the British soldiers and turned into prisons. The one thing they all had in common? Dirty little food. Men wounded and dying. Well, I helped them escape. When I helped 3 major American soldier officers escape, that's when I became famous. I eventually had to go into hiding because King George offered 20 years of money to any soldier who captured me. I escaped while being chased by 2 British warships. I lived the rest of my life in poverty. I wrote to the men who in the American Continental Congress, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and many others, I wrote, I am now very desolate without money, without clothes, without friends. Those men ignored me. But then I wrote to George Washington. He told the men, it would appear that this woman has been indefatigable for the relief of the prisoners and in measure for facilitating their escape. Because of George Washington, on August 10th, 1978, the men on the Board of War granted me a pension of $53 a year. I died in 1787, forgotten by history.
But I'm confused. Prudence is portraying a woman named Elizabeth. That's breaking tradition, isn't it?
Prudence's middle name is Elizabeth, so it's okay.
If I gathered 300 kids and teenagers into one room and asked them to vote on either keeping to tradition and allowing only the men's pageant or be rebellious and allow the women's pageant, what do you think the result would be?
That's a tricky question.
It all depends.
On what?
If their parents vote one way, the kids will vote the same way.
Except a few teenagers who would vote opposite their parents just to be rebellious.
I have one more recording here. It's your mom making a speech last night at the 4th of July Parade Planning Committee meeting.
Usually only the 5 committee members show up at the meetings, but last night, because of the chaos, they had to move locations because they knew they'd get a big crowd.
Over 400 people showed up.
Benjamin Franklin is credited with starting the American Post Office, but while he was living in France and England, it was his wife who ran the postal service while also running Benjamin's businesses. She died of a broken heart. She begged him in letters to come home and be with her while she was dying, but he refused. Why? That's not important. What is important is that Miss Deborah Franklin was an American Revolutionary War hero, just like her husband. But she is barely mentioned in history books. And then there's Martha Washington. She was more than the country's first lady. She lived on battlefields. Yes, General Washington was of course on battlefields, but so was his wife. She repaired and washed soldiers' uniforms. She comforted them. She helped cook and feed them. She, too, was an American Revolutionary War hero. And Mrs. Abigail Adams, her hundreds of letters to her husband, where she gave him ideas, she was so intelligent. How did she find time to write such inspirational letters while working in the fields, taking care of the children, tending to the animals, cooking, cleaning, and being the boss of Adams' business? These men in the Continental Congress could only gather in Philadelphia in 1776 and do what they did to declare independence from King George because it was their wives who were doing everything but sitting on cushioned chairs. It's time for this town to recognize the women of the American Revolutionary War, and we intend to do so with a women's theatrical pageant. And we would like the Parade's Planning Commission to allow us to have a float in the parade. Our women will be wearing colonial American dresses and soldiers' uniforms and slave rags, and we will be standing on the floats singing our lungs out in freedom and celebration.
Well, I think I have enough information to begin writing my podcast. Of course, I will have to wait to finish writing and recording it. Got to have the outcome. Tradition versus rebellion. What will it be in this small rural country town?
I think by last night, everybody is just plain tired of clapping and booing. People's hands and lips ache.
Oh, it was such a wonderful 4th of July celebration, wasn't it? Mr. Ebenezer Smudgeton and myself, sitting on stage together at this PTA meeting, we are delighted and thankful.
God bless America. God bless America.
We both wish to express our deepest gratitude to Mrs. Gertrude Hall. She became our 21st century American Revolutionary War hero.
Sure hated to see her die while blowing into her tuba in an off-key rendition of Yankee Doodle Dandy. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to laugh. But when it's time for each of us to go, well, what better time to go than helping the town celebrate both traditions and progress combined?
I think it is only appropriate and respectful for me to speak about our beautiful Mrs. Gertrude Hall, who was 91 years old. 3 days before the 4th of July celebration, as we all know, when she was supposed to play her tuba in the women's theatrical production, she
puffed up her lungs, and she blew air just a little too hard into that giant tuba. Dropped over, but thankfully her head went right into the tuba, and she died inside her beloved musical instrument. Sorry.
Though we all grieve at this town's loss, we are so truly grateful that she revealed in a letter opened by her attorney the following morning that she was leaving $10 million to the town to be spent on repairing roads, repairing people's barns, helping people pay their home and business mortgages during hard times, and building 3 new schools, and buying 500 books a year for each school library.
Only if this town held both the men's and women's theatrical pageant in the public park from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. and break tradition and move the fireworks to 10:30 p.m.
Each 4th of July for the next 91 years. Make it a new town tradition.
You know what, honey? Oh, honey. Ooh, sorry, ladies. Didn't mean to call you honey. Little slip of the tongue. Money speaks, though. And speaking of money, I got an after the 4th of July shovel, rake, and bucket sale going on in my store. $12 even for each of you.
And now we will listen to our town's Miss Statue of Liberty and a great actress, Miss Prudence Brunel, sing this town's favorite patriotic song.
Yankee Doodle went to town riding on a pony, stuck a feather in his hat and called it macaroni. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, Yankee Doodle dandy. Mind the music and the step, and with that girls be handy.